What is going on? How are you, Aziz?
What's up? It's good to be here.
Dude, thank you so much for coming to hang out with me today. I'm excited to have you here.
I'm very excited to be here. I feel like I'm in this special club that gets to be a
Uh,
part of this pod. So
yeah, we're
it's an honor.
we're just getting rolling, but it's we're having a lot of fun for sure. I'm losing count. I think this is my 6th episode, so we're starting to get some traction. It's been fun putting this together. Let's kind of dive in here. So today I'm here with Aziz Zakkout. You're an apartment broker with Marcus and Millichap. Thanks again for coming to hang out with me today. I'm excited to be chatting with you. I think we've known each other maybe about a year.
About a year.
Yeah. Kind of met with the families and the kids and all
just
that.
Forced upon one another because of kids' sports.
Hey, that's what, and then good people connect with
like
good people.
minds.
Like minds, exactly.
Sure.
So, but no, thank you. So yeah, if you don't mind, can you kind of just give us a little bit of a background on who you are and how you got into what you do and just kind of go from there?
Yeah, well, prior to becoming an apartment broker, I didn't really have much of an experience. I've been doing this for about 10 years.
Okay.
I started early on when I was newly married and my wife and I were expecting our first child. And I had just come out of like a marketing gig with like a startup company. And I thought like we were going to get bought out and I was going to like ride this entrepreneurial wave with them. It just didn't pan out the way I thought it would. And again,
Sure.
I had a kid on the way and my wife's like, so
What's the plan?
what are we going to do?
Right.
And so I just decided to go for it. I had the blessing to be able to use up a little bit of my runway and just like fully commit to the commercial real estate world, which I always wanted to get into real estate. I just didn't know if I wanted to be in residential or commercial.
Okay.
And so I interviewed around as like an assistant / agent with a couple of top producers and one gentleman in particular. I wonder if I should say his name. He's no longer with us. Barry, you'll know who he is. Really, really good guy, Barry Tashikorian. I'll just say his name.
I know Barry.
Yeah. Rest in peace, Barry. He actually hired me. And he figured out that I had another interview lined up with Marcus and Millichap, which his brother worked at.
Okay.
And so he's like, you know what? Go interview with them and then get back to me. That's my brother. So go talk to them. And so I did. And I ended up staying at Marcus and Millichap. I just really liked the atmosphere. It was very like objective reasoning on values. And like there wasn't as much emotion, which kind of gave me some anxiety of dealing with people's emotions.
Right.
And so, it's been an amazing ride so far. And I feel like I'm just getting started. And I've got 3 kids now.
Yep.
And we live here in La Costa. And it's just given me such an amazing life.
Beautiful family, that's for sure.
To help people like improve their position and then also, help myself improve my position as well. So
right on.
Yeah, it's been a good ride.
All right. Well, that's a quick, good overview. Let's dive in a little bit here onto, generating business. So obviously you're a commercial broker. There's a myriad of ways that you can generate business in the space, but what's like some of the key components to how you generate your business?
Yeah. So it's not rocket science. What I do doesn't take a lot of technical skill. It's more like interpersonal. So we really focus at our firm on proactive marketing, reaching out to people directly. And so my like subset of investors that I target are like mom and pop, like $1 to $10 million. And what we do is we cold call. That's like the best form of business generation. So
phones.
Yeah, right out of the gate, they teach us, you go in, you cold call, you put in your calls, you develop your list, your target lists. And the people that are the most proficient in overcoming like the objections early on, as you can imagine, we all get cold called. I hang up on people all the time, as do you.
Right.
The ones that can overcome that tend to be the most successful. So the more you call, the luckier you get. Okay. And I think, my fiercest competitors in the marketplace right now, they all cold call.
Oh, really?
Yeah, tremendous abilities on the phones. Once you get in front of the people, you figure out what their problems are, what their goals are, and you try to figure out ways to help add value to that. And that's like kind of the second part of that continuum. But just cold calling, that's like the main way we generate business. Okay. And once we sit down with people, we figure out if it's warranted for us to, do an analysis for their properties. And once we figure out if there is a motivation for them to sell at some point down the line, whether it's immediate or, 6 months, years down the line, then we're there. We've developed
the relationship.
We've developed the relationship. Yeah, that's kind of the biggest thing is building relationships.
Well, so lenders, right? There's a gazillion lenders out there. There's a gazillion real estate agents, residential agents. There's a bunch of commercial. Yeah. Probably have less on the commercial side than on the residential side, but you obviously got to differentiate yourself. So providing value to your client, right? What's like a sweet spot, or where's the extra value that you and your team put forth to, to separate yourself from the pack?
There's two ways of doing the business. One is very transactional, just focusing on the deal as a one-off basis, and that's definitely a way to like do really well. And then another is actually like listening to the client and what their goals are, what their needs are. Sometimes it just doesn't make sense for someone to sell, and there's a million reasons for that. So, having that individual like truly feel like they're being heard as to what their goals are, and then being able to deliver on that specific need that they have, whether it's research, financing, sound analysis. That's not like pie in the sky analysis. That's like wishful thinking.
Right.
That's really the best way. It's a little hard early on because it takes such a long time to ramp up into getting business for a new agent to do that, to deliver that, because they're really focused on trying to get those fees early on to like float them. That's really the best way to separate yourself.
Well, and then let's get into like the nitty gritties of it. So like, when you're looking at deals, like there's you guys perform equity analyses and you got to underwrite, the deals. Like, let's talk a little bit further about, that piece of it.
Yeah. So, the way you would analyze like a single family home when you do like what is it called, the CMA, an analysis for that value is like you pull comps and you eliminate the outliers, and you kind of show like general value based off of, price per
sales.
Price per square foot and like
bedroom, bathroom count,
a few other metrics. But for commercial properties, or I sell apartment buildings, anything over 5 units and up is considered commercial. So qualifies for a commercial loan. Those deals are underwritten completely differently. Debt that you get on those properties is predicated on how much income does that property produce north of what the cost of the debt is at the time. And so we do a full analysis that basically touches on different metrics. Cap rate analysis, GRM, which is a gross rent multiple. We can get into that later. Price per unit and price per square foot.
Okay.
And so
all different ways to study the property.
Exactly. So basically a lender is going to lend to you on a commercial property, and then they're going to make sure that the property is able to support itself. And a good rule of thumb is if the net income, which is gross income minus operating expenses, that's the net income, that needs to generally exceed the current cost of the debt, the annual debt, by like 20%.
Okay.
That's a good rule of thumb.
Is it too complicated, do you think, to put like some general numbers, like for an example, like you have a property you could kind of just walk us through, or is that too complicated?
Yeah, that's fine. So if a property makes $100,000 a year, you subtract from that, let's call it 35% of operating expenses. It's probably more. Let's call it 40%. Okay. So you shave off $40,000 a year in expenses. Right. You're left with $60,000 a year, right? So I suck at math. I use my calculator.
That's all right.
So you take your $60,000 a year, and your debt needs to be around $48,000 a year for it to qualify. So we understand what's happening in the marketplace. Sure. Interest rates are going up, and a lot of people are freaking out. And generally speaking, the higher the cost of debt, the more income the property needs to produce to support that loan at that particular value. But the problem is, multifamily, at least in California, I think the United States as a whole, is probably regarded as the safest asset class in commercial real estate. And so values continue to go up regardless of the fact that interest rates are going up.
Impacting the value, whereas like in the residential side, rates have gone up so fast that now you're starting to see a leveling off. And even, people are starting to negotiate back and forth on purchases on residential. That's not necessarily happening in the commercial side.
No, because the banks for residential are underwriting the borrower as opposed to, commercial. They're really underwriting the
Let's talk about that.
building.
Banks and the way they underwrite the deal is totally different than residential. And we touched on it for a second. Let's go a little deeper into that.
Yeah. So banks are going to look at a myriad of information coming from the property. Rent roll, operating statements, insurance loss runs to figure out if there's any claims. And they want to really understand like what this property is, what it's producing, what the projected rents are, which is very subjective, but they'll look at like actual comps in the marketplace. Okay. And they'll also look at like the credibility and the ability of the buyer to be able to stabilize these assets and move them. Okay. And so they have these underwriting thresholds that they need to meet. Like, for example, if a property has lean expenses, it's probably because the owner at the time is just not investing as much money as they should be. And so the bank is looking to protect its shareholders. And so they're going to stress test these buildings and have, certain thresholds for each line item. Okay. Utilities, insurance, property tax has to be reassessed at the sale value. That's a no-brainer. They'll even put in like a reserves line item for like on a per unit basis annually. And so they'll stress test the numbers and they'll come up with their own net operating income, which may be different from how the property is actually performing. And so they'll stress test the building and they'll make sure that net income also exceeds their debt quote by a certain amount. And so where the borrower comes into play is they have to have, good credibility, good credit, and they have to have at least been able to demonstrate that they're competent to manage these assets. I'm talking a lot more about unstabilized products, value add deals. For the most part, a lot of the deals that are transacting today, there's a lot of value to be added. A lot of times the people that we're selling properties for are long-term owners that maybe have inherited properties that are, dissolving partnerships or marriages. And so, for one reason or another, they're selling for a reason, and they have, these properties that just haven't really been taken care of as well. And so it's incumbent on the buyer to come in and demonstrate to the bank to clean them up. Exactly. And so what's unique right now is a lot of these properties, the rate of return is less than the interest rate that's being offered. For an example, properties are being sold at a 3% capitalization rate, and interest rates are right now in the high fives, low sixes for multifamily products, which is, by the way, unlike the interest rates that you'll find for different asset classes, retail, industrial, office. Those banks, those committees, they get together and they decide what those rates are going to be for those different asset classes. Yeah. And so I'm losing my train of thought, but I think the most important thing to note is that you have to really demonstrate to a bank that you're competent.
Creditworthy. Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Let's talk about research. Like, you have to do your research, right, in the marketplace, and identifying where opportunities are, maybe bringing opportunities to your investment base. How do you guys do that? What's your way that you go out and study the marketplace and find search in the market?
Yeah. So like I said early on, with the new people coming into the business, it's really cold calling.
Okay.
But it's not just cold calling. Like, you really have to stay up with people and their storylines. Everyone has like different things going on in their life.
Sure.
So staying consistent and staying on the phone with them, over a course of years really matters. Inserting yourself when the time presents itself. And so over the course of, like, me knowing you, for example, and let's just say you own an apartment building.
Yep.
I'm going to meet you for the first time if I can close on the first call, and we're going to sit down and I'm going to really pitch to do like an analysis for you, an equity analysis for the building. I'm going to show you what we think the building's worth based off of the metrics that we discussed.
Okay.
And then we're going to talk about how much equity you have in your property, what your return on equity is. And we're going to show you, if you were to refinance right now, what that would look like. If you were to sell the property, what that would look like, what the consequences are of selling a property outright, how to do a 1031 exchange where you defer your taxes into other properties. A lot of people have like different goals. They want to increase, their unit scale. They want to have more units, or they want to downsize into, smaller properties. And so we're going to do that analysis for you. And then we're going to update it for you once every 6 months. Give or take. And we're going to stay up on it with you on, market research and what's happening in the marketplace, and just like really building
a long-term relationship.
Your
sales cycle is like, years in some cases.
Many times. Yeah. I mean, the biggest red flag for me is like when I speak with someone for the first or second time on the phone, they say, yeah, I want to sell. Really? When someone says that, you're probably late to the party. Yeah. And you're probably like the third or fourth guy he's told that to. And he's just like trying to shop offers off market.
Okay.
And guys like us will certainly like try to pursue that business, but we can't do everything perfectly. It's not always as ideal as you want it to be. In an ideal world, you take the property out, you list it, you put it out in the open market, you develop offers, but not everyone's sold on that idea for one reason or another. And you just have to decide if you're going to invest that time with that individual by bringing them offers off market with like absolutely no control. So managing time is also like a very critical factor.
You can go down a rabbit hole and waste a lot of time if
exactly.
you're not careful.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Touch on 1031 exchange. Let's explore that a little further, because that's a really hot topic. I feel like people are interested in understanding, going from one property to the next, the tax benefits of doing that. Let's go into that one on the commercial side.
Yeah. So, I mean, when you sell real estate, investment properties, you're going to pay tax, a lot of tax. And it's really based off of what you bought it for and then what you end up selling for. So what that profit is subject to state and federal capital gains
Capital
tax.
gains. Yep.
And that bracket that you fall under is kind of predicated on like how much income you make and how much money's coming out. And so for the most part, people are facing massive capital gains consequences, and they don't want to pay, that tax. And so the IRS has given us this vehicle to be able to defer the consequence by moving that gain to a different property. And so you need to the main rule is that if you sell a property for a certain amount, let's say $1 million, the next property that you purchase has to be for equal to that value or greater.
Similar in kind.
Like-kind properties. Exactly. So, fee simple property exactly. So can't be land. Although there are special rules like with that I won't get into. I'm not a financial advisor, or I'm not a 1031 intermediary. So we can kind of get into that. We can forward some leads as well to your viewers to learn more about that. But that's really the gist of it. So when you do a 1031 exchange, there's certain timeline rules as well that you have to abide by.
There's definitely concerns people have. Let's talk about those, because there's timelines and other pitfalls.
Yeah, so everyone knows about 1031 exchanges for the most part. So the biggest concern that we deal with as agents is when someone says, okay, Aziz, you're going to sell my property and we're going to 1031 exchange. Awesome. This is great. Well, how do I know that I'm going to be able to find a property? Because, the rules are you're going to have 45 days to figure out what you're going to buy. You're going to have to let the IRS know about that. And then 6 months, which runs concurrently from the close of escrow on the down leg, the property that you're selling, to close on that property.
6 months.
6 months, exactly. So the big concern is like, what do I find? I'm going to be, I've got all this cash now in this like 1031 account, and I'm out here trying to find properties, and there's like not enough product out there. And so that's big. So the most important thing is, teaming up with the right person that's at least able to cold call proactively on your behalf, and before you even do that, having the understanding as to what it's going to take for you to get into the next property. If you've got all this cash coming out of this property, that's awesome. But if the properties that you're now shopping for cost a lot more money, right? You're probably going to have to either take the hit or borrow money to do that. And if you're going to borrow money, do you understand what those terms are with that lender? So what I really stress on when someone does an exchange or wants to do an exchange, before we even analyze the property, I really push for, hey, let's get you with a lender.
Sure.
And let's figure out, we want to make sure what it's going to take for you to borrow money on something, whatever that may be. So I'll put together several scenarios of different properties that person can purchase. We'll take this theoretical cash out that they're getting, and we're going to run loan scenarios for them based off of the current rates that are available. And we'll just try to manage that expectation. How much is it going to cost for you to get an appraisal? How much is it going to cost for you to pay the bank, to pay the originator on that note? And gosh, I've seen scenarios where people sell their properties and they come to realize that they're unable to qualify for the loan.
Ouch.
Scary. Yeah. And so, that brings in, private money scenarios and
extra fees and higher rates,
mismanaged expectations, and, people get really stuck. And for that to happen, especially over the last, 5 years, for someone to eat it in a market economy where, everything's on an upswing, it's no bueno. It's not good. So focusing on qualifying for the loan is like the biggest thing. And just, I want to add one thing, the loans, to do these loans, it typically takes for commercial, at least 45 days. Unlike residential, it takes
we say 30, but we can do it in 15 or less if someone's on it.
Exactly. Yeah. But the information, right? They're managing the performance of the asset, these banks. So the information comes in, the appraisal comes in. The appraisal can take 2 weeks to come back, right? So they take all that information, the underwriter puts it all together and asks questions. And that process is at least 30 days for that individual. And then once he has the file ready to present to their loan committee, that's another week and a half, 2 weeks, assuming everything moves fast. Now, in a market where some banks are offering the best rates, those banks are slammed, right? They're getting all the business for one reason or another. So those timelines could be even expanded from 45 to 60 days.
Yeah, 60 days plus.
That's why commercial deals take so long, is like the underwriting process. And that's just multifamily. For office or industrial sites, certain banks want environmental analysis.
Okay.
Those
More
reports take
complicated.
many weeks to produce. Phase 1 studies, phase 2 studies, that can take even longer, and that's like thousands of
Spending
dollars.
a lot of money to pull all this data
So
together.
as a buyer that would not know that going into it, I mean, you can imagine how upset that person's going to be. I mean, you really put yourself in great jeopardy. So don't be misled sometimes. I think a big pitfall, this is just my PSA, when you get off-market offers, it sounds great. It could sound like a really great pie in the sky idea. Just please understand your capital gains consequences and what's going to be expected of you if you are in fact planning on deferring those gains.
Yeah. Let's go back to like focus on, being successful in your field. So there's, always like the best of the best, the guys that just crush, that dominate the space, the middle of the road guys, and then the rookies just tend to start figuring it out.
Yeah.
What does it take to really climb the ladder and be like, the best of the best in commercial real estate as a broker?
Great question. I think the most, if I could describe it in one word, is just consistency. Consistently persistent. So
prospecting, cold calling,
and just
relationships.
That's like inherent. Like everyone that's somewhat personable can like build a decent enough relationship, but being able to like stay up and having a system internally on how to stay up on certain individuals, having a process of like having a reminder to like update an assessment that you've done 4, 5, 6 months ago, or staying up to date on research and just being able to consistently provide that value and put your name out there. I think that's the most important thing. So what I see, the most successful guys in the business, they typically have like a support team, kind of like what you have. And they have an assistant, they have someone they're able to delegate certain functions to certain individuals that just focus on that one particular task, leaving the pure prospecting for the moneymaker, the main guy.
Yep.
Yeah. I mean, if you could just have that, I mean, you're golden, because all you have to do is just focus on one function, prospecting and getting in front of people.
Now, newer agents, are they that are just getting ramped up like early on in your career, like when you getting started? What were the focus points there? Was it the prospecting? You don't maybe have the team yet, right? You
don't have the team. I mean, generally when you come in, at least like with multifamily and commercial real estate, I mean, the way our industry is built is there's mentorship. Right. Okay. You go in, you have a senior agent that kind of takes you under their wing. You put in the work, you cold call, you get in front of people, you get your partner in front of people, and they help you reel in that business.
I like Boiler Room, the movie Boiler Room.
Exactly. ABC. It's exactly.
Recco.
Yeah. So again, I mean, going in, you're probably, unless your team, your senior has like a really good, assistant that's able to produce like proposals and help you on that like back end support, a lot of it's going to fall on your shoulders. So you're going to be working like 80 hours a week, no joke, going in on Saturdays. I mean, when I started, I remember the day my kid was born, I was in the office like that same day, which in hindsight, I regret now that I've got my kids.
Right.
But that's kind of what it took. For me, my wife was literally like, "What are you doing here? Like, my mom's here. Get out of here.
Wow.
Go."
Okay.
Yeah.
Wow.
Which I'm very thankful. I mean, having that support at home is like so crucial. So crucial. I mean, without the home support, my wife, family, I mean, that it just doesn't work. You need to have someone helping you emotionally, mentally to do that.
Give you the lift you need.
To give you the lift. Exactly. So to answer your question, for the young guys coming up, I think the most important thing is having an understanding of the runway of time that it's going to take for you to close a deal. Many shops will tell you it'll be like 6 months. It's not realistic. You really should give yourself a year. You could get lucky and get in front of the right person at the right time, and you've just got this like unicorn buyer or seller. That happens, but give yourself a good year to a year and a half of making no income whatsoever, preparing yourself. Maybe you're working a side job some way. And putting in those hours and expecting to kind of do all that back end support.
That makes the barrier to entry a little bit tougher. You got to figure you're going a year and a half without income.
Yeah.
I mean, you almost need that side hustle or different, like you said.
It's crazy. And it's just not for everyone. But, in a sense, I'm kind of proud that there is a high barrier to entry. And I think it's to the benefit of the buyer and seller pool that we have, certain individuals that have managed to last for as long as they have been. It just kind of, if someone's been doing it for a while and we're cold calling you, like you should probably like listen to what we have to say.
You know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And if it's not me, even my competitors, like, we kind of fight for listings and business all the time, but I have tremendous respect for everyone that is in our industry, because we all understand like what we each have to do to make it. So whether it's me or someone else at a different shop, like if we're cold calling you, take a moment to hear what we have to say, and let's build a relationship. And I think something good will come out of that for both sides.
Love it.
Yeah.
So let's shift for a minute. Let's talk about finding good deals. Everyone wants a good deal in anything, right? But in specifically commercial real estate, apartments, where does someone find a good deal?
What is a good deal?
Let's start there.
It's
what
so
is a good
subjective.
Deal? Yeah, let's start right there.
I mean, everyone's got a different goal, whether it's like
Sure.
hedging on whatever bets they made in the market, or they need to park cash to help care for someone. The most important thing, just as we agents are building relationships, trying to build relationships with investors, with owners, it's incumbent on the investor, the owner of the building as well, to build relationships with the agents, to reach out. So if you're looking to buy a deal, make yourself known. Reach out to the agents whose names you see everywhere, and introduce yourself. Let them know what the goals are, and keep a friendly rapport. Because when that person finds a great deal, or a deal that's probably going to get a lot of interest, they're probably going to go to the people that have shown them the most, that have reciprocated that respect. And the most successful investors that are crushing it right now, that get all the deals, have the best relationships with the brokerage community. And I'm talking about like, they know, like, their wife's name, the family members, kids,
They're deep.
It's more personal. Yeah. Right. Because everyone wants to work with someone they enjoy working with.
Sure.
And I think there's a misconception that, this is a thankless business. And in certain cases it can be, and people tend to be transactional. But I think the ones that have done really well have just reached out to agents and have had that like mutual relationship.
Okay.
And so I think that's really critical.
Professional investors, right? Everyone wants to, continuously be active, looking at deals, looking at opportunities. What are, professional investors, what do they do to stay active and to constantly be you just had to hit on it, where they're constantly in front of their brokers like yourself and communicating? I mean, is there?
So they take it one step further, right? So they're not just meeting brokers and putting, smiles on faces. They're out writing offers on deals, even deals that they might not even like.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Okay. They're out driving the market. They understand the markets intimately, just as much, if not maybe more, than the brokerage community does.
Okay.
They have good banking relationships. Sure. They understand the needs of different lenders in the marketplace, and what is expected of them for those loans. So, understanding, reach out to your real estate agent, ask them, hey, who are the top 3-4 lenders in the marketplace? Okay. I want to get to know what the criteria is to qualify for a loan.
Sure.
For that individual. What are their rates? Where are the penalties for paying off loans, and kind of getting into the
getting the nitty gritties and learning all those details.
Nitty gritty. Exactly. And so I talked about like writing on offers, like when an agent sends someone a deal, a lot of times the person's busy, and if they don't like it, they just don't respond.
Sure.
At all. And that's cool. That's fine. But I think the people that reciprocate, communicate consistently with that agent, that's typically the person that ends up getting more looks at different properties.
Okay.
Because there's that feedback. Nice. And I talked about writing offers on deals they might not even like. I mean, you don't know. Sometimes a lot of buyers, end up looking at a deal 2, 3, 4 times before they actually pull the trigger. And then hindsight, they're like, wow, this was a great deal.
Yeah.
I should have written on this sooner.
Yeah.
Yeah. But people are processing so much information. It's understandable. But sometimes if an agent, like, you feel like you can trust that individual, like, listen to what they have to say, have them pitch you on why they think it's a good deal, as opposed to just writing a deal off completely.
Gotcha.
Okay. But it's a two-way road.
It's a two-way,
right? A lot of agents, very cliche, like we fit into this like stereotype that we're like, I don't know, salesman, of like low class, low end salesman, right? Where we're just pushing any product and every product, regardless of whether it's good or bad, and it's always sounds like the best property, right? And so I think it's also incumbent on us agents is to, if we're gonna like endorse something, is we have to do it earnestly, not just like any property.
Yeah, it's not just feeding everything. It's you want. Okay, that makes sense. Nice.
So mutual relationship.
So let's have some fun for a minute. So let's talk about maybe some crazy stories. Being a commercial agent here in San Diego, like you've got to have some stories, or where some stuff happened. Anything off the top of your head that you want to share?
My gosh, I mean, generally speaking, I think you don't really know what you're going to get into when you walk into a property for an inspection.
Right.
And so sometimes you go in for the first time and the owner even hasn't been in the property for, years, right?
Okay,
They could be
sure.
an out-of-town owner. And so I remember one time we went into a unit and we were looking at the operating statement. We realized, hey, certain utilities are really, really high. Went into all the units, everything was good. And then the last unit that we went into was marijuana growing operation.
No way.
Yeah.
Oh.
And this was earlier on in my career, and it wasn't as friendly of an environment for the cannabis industry as it is today. But
okay.
that was kind of a scary moment for me, for sure.
The whole facility, just racks and racks.
Yeah, it was just like literally the living room, the bedroom. I mean, they had like the fluorescent lighting. It was just unreal.
Wow.
Like it was actually very like impressive. Like, wow, this is a very entrepreneurial person. And I think there was a show once on HBO where I think that was the premise. Like they would grow in houses. And
interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
Weeds, I think it was called. I forget.
Okay. I didn't see it.
So that was one. Other crazy stories are like, look, very competitive mindset to be an agent in general. And so showing up to meetings and having, seeing your competitor kind of lurking in the background, waiting for their turn to like intervene with that individual. Right. So it gets very cutthroat for sure.
Okay.
I'm trying to think what else.
I was just curious. That's a great story. I mean, the cannabis one's pretty fun.
Yeah.
We kind of wrap up here, but what are some action items? Someone, they're brand new. They want to get going into investing in the commercial space. They want to buy multifamily. What would be your advice to them? They came to you and said, hey, what's step one? Obviously kind of give us some framework or roadmap to what that would look like for a newer investor.
Yeah. I mean, you may not think you have enough cash to make something work. But I think the most important thing, and I touched on this earlier, is getting with a lender, figuring out what is expected of you. Reach out to your friends and family, figure out like in your network, are you putting the money together to get, all together? And what is expected of you? What is expected of you if you decided to pay off that note in the first few years? Some people have this idea that they're going to buy a property and they're going to flip it, right? We see that a lot with home flippers, right? But, with commercial properties, a lot of times there's penalties for selling these properties, like, up to 5-6%, in certain cases, way more, depending on like the specific loan product, yield maintenance. I won't get into that, but understanding what is expected of you when you go and borrow the money, and figuring out how much money you need. Now, for commercial properties, unlike residential, you typically put a lot of money down. It's typically like 35-40% down of the full value. And that's a lot. Sometimes if there's a chunk of change. Yeah. If there's enough money, if there's enough value to be added to the property and the bank sees that, like for example, the rents are really, really, really below market, and if it was fully stabilized, the value is going to be that much more, then a bank could lend based off of that future value, but you'll still need 30% of the current ask price or purchase price to do the deal. And that's going to be a short-term loan as well, right? So understanding, like, if you're going to do those fixers, and you're going to do that kind of loan, you're going to need to know, like, hey, you're going to have to hustle. You're going to have your contractors lined up. You're going to have a good budget and understanding of what the cost is to renovate a unit. Right now values are all going up for all different materials, windows, everything, cabinets, paint, all that stuff. So having a very strong awareness of what that cost is going to be really, really important. Making sure, especially right now where everything seems like it's crashing, not getting caught on something and being that guy that pays like the astronomical price beyond what everyone else is paying.
Want to be that guy.
Don't want to be that guy. No.
What is your, I don't want to say crystal ball, but like, residential real estate, it's stabilizing, and it's, it's on this crazy rocket ship to the moon like it's been about values. Yeah. On the commercial side, what does the next, call it 12, 18, 24 months, look like from your perspective in the commercial segment? Well, I mean, in the commercial segment, there's different product types. I'm personally very optimistic about multifamily
just because it's always been kind of seen as the safest asset class. Unfortunately, there's a housing crisis right now, and there's not enough new product coming online to satisfy all these renters in the marketplace. So I think all apartments right now, and I just focus in San Diego, right?
Sure.
So I see tremendous demand still, regardless of the fact that interest rates are going up. But, you know, I believe that we have the strongest country in the world. And I think across the United States, all asset classes are going to do well. You know, if you focus on like a dollar cost average approach of just buying a relatively good deal in any market, you're going to do okay long term.
Sure.
But if it's like your one-off deal and you're going to do one deal every 5 years, you know, just be very mindful of, you know, what the downside is, being very aware of that.
Sure.
But overall, I'm extremely optimistic over the next 18 months. I personally think that rates will come back.
I agree with you.
Yeah. And I suppose that's why they're, you know, bringing rates up so fast, so aggressively, to be able to bring them back down. So I suppose at some point, I don't know, but I think you have a good insight on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of factors. We want to get into all that today, but yeah, there's a lot of reasons that they've been hiked up as fast as they have.
But that's just me. That's my Aziz crystal ball.
Okay.
Might not be the clearest crystal ball, but I'm just very bullish on the product.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
dude, it's been fun hanging out with you today. I really enjoyed chatting with you, man. Yeah, this is awesome. So
I appreciate it.
Thanks for your time.
Yeah, thanks.
All right, brother. We'll see you later.
See you, buddy.
Boom.